Okay, let's talk about the EU's MedTech regulations. They're complicated. But there's a new proposal on the table that's looking to slash a ton of that red tape for device makers. And that could be huge for getting new innovations to patients faster. So let's unpack what's actually in this plan. So here's the big question, right? After years of things getting more and more complex, is MedTech regulation finally about to get simpler? For real? Well, this new proposal from the EU, it's kind of suggesting the answer might actually be yes. When you boil it all down, this whole thing is about one thing: cutting the administrative burden. The idea is to let companies focus on what they do best, innovating and keeping patients safe instead of drowning in paperwork. A lot of these changes really focus on the relationship between manufacturers and what are called notified bodies. Now, these are the independent groups that check if a device meets all the EU standards. So let's dig into how that relationship is set to change. All right, first up on the chopping block, safety reports. And look, anyone who's ever worked in this space knows this is where the mountains of paperwork live. It's a prime target for making things more efficient, for sure. Okay, so let's start with the summary of safety and clinical performance, the SSCP. The old rule was pretty broad. You basically had to do it for a lot of things. But the new proposal, it really narrows that scope. From now on, an SSCP will only be needed for those higher-risk devices that have to get a full technical thumbs up from a notified body. And get this, that extra separate validation step, it's gone. They're just rolling it into the main assessment. It sounds like a small tweak, but trust me, that's a big win for efficiency. Next up, the Periodic Safety Update Report, or PSUR. Man, this one. The old way meant a constant cycle of updates. It was just a never-ending hamster wheel of work. The new proposal tackles this head-on by simply reducing how often you have to do them. And that is going to be a huge relief for a lot of manufacturers.
And it's not just that you're doing the reports less often. The way they get reviewed is changing too. It's being streamlined. So instead of it being this whole separate thing, checking the PSUR is now just going to be part of the notified body's regular surveillance. It's one of those, why didn't we do this before kind of moves that just makes so much sense.
Okay, so you see the pattern here, right? Let's carry that over to the next area, post-market oversight. The theme is exactly the same. Let's work smarter, not harder. This is especially true when we're talking about reporting incidents and managing updates to devices that are already out there in the world. 30 days, just let that sink in for a second. This number right here, it's a massive deal for manufacturers. And here's why that number is so huge. It's the new reporting timeline for certain serious incidents. The old deadline was a super tight 15 days. Now, as long as an incident isn't an immediate threat to public health, companies get a full 30 days. We're talking double the time to do a proper investigation and get a solid report in. That's a game changer. All right, what about when you want to change a device after it's already been certified? This has always been a tricky area. The proposal brings in this really flexible three-tiered system. Think of it like this. Tier 1 is for minor, low-risk tweaks. You can just go ahead and do it. Tier 2 is for slightly bigger changes. You just have to give the notified body a heads up, and only the really major stuff, that's Tier 3, needs you to get approval beforehand. It just adds a ton of common sense and flexibility to the process. And to make that new system work even better, they're introducing something called a change control plan. You can think of it like a prenup for device changes. Basically, the manufacturer and the notified body get together and agree ahead of time on how they'll handle certain kinds of future changes. It's all about planning ahead so you don't hit those frustrating bottlenecks later on. Okay, last but not least, let's shift gears a little and talk about in vitro diagnostics, IVDs. The story here is going to sound familiar. It's all about getting rid of needless hurdles, specifically for performance studies. And the changes here are super practical. For starters, if your study just involves a routine blood draw, you don't need to get prior authorization anymore. Simple as that. And second, for those companion diagnostic studies using leftover samples, stuff that was already collected for other tests, that whole notification requirement, gone. Poof. These are just really smart, common sense changes that are going to make important research a whole lot easier. So let's zoom out and put it all together. When you look at this summary, the theme just jumps out at you, doesn't it? The SSCP is narrower, PSURs are less frequent, vigilance reporting gets more time, post-certification changes get a smart new system, and IVD studies get easier. Across the board, the arrow is pointing in one direction: less administrative headache and more practical, common-sense rules. Okay, so the bottom line. What does all of this actually mean for the medtech world, for the notified bodies, and, for the rest of us, the patients? I think this quote really nails it.
The whole point is to cut down on the administrative burden. But why? It's about freeing up those precious resources. We're talking time, money, brain power. So they can be put back where they belong, into creating amazing new technologies and making sure patients are safe.
And that really leaves us with the big question, doesn't it? Will cutting all this red tape actually mean we see faster innovation getting to the people who need it? Or is this just a really good first step on what might be a much, much longer road to real reform? That's what everyone in the industry is going to be watching as these changes start to roll out. And that's it for this explainer.